Gold Day class, you already got the first video from pages 1 through 10. Black Day class, we went through that together in class. So I'm going to be starting lesson 1, exploration 2 in this video. I know some of you have been having issues with the tech online for getting logged into your HMH. I have changed the settings on that, so the instructions I gave you might not be entirely accurate. When you log in, you should only have access to diversity of life. It should say HMH, science, dimensions, diversity of living things. Below that should be the 3 units for the book, which are Unit 1, History of Life on Earth, Unit 2, Evolution, and Unit 3, Human Influence on Inheritance. Underneath the units, you should be able to find a list of resources, and your ebook should be one of those options. When you select the ebook, it should take you to a separate page that lists the units and lessons in the ebook. On this page, you should select the top option, which should say HMH Science Dimensions Module D. This will take you to the unit opener. If you want to skip this and go directly to your reading, then you need to scroll down and find Unit 1, Lesson 1, Exploration 2. I find it easier just to start at the unit opener and then change the page to where the reading starts. The other option under resources on the home page is your print version of your book. The printable version will have page numbers, but it does not have the audio or read along highlight options. It doesn't matter which one you choose, it just depends on which one, if you want the audio or not. Some of you are having troubles opening the ebook when you click on it. First, you need to make sure you do not have an update for your iPad and that your downloads and browsing history is cleared. If it still doesn't work, it might be an issue with your iPad. I've already contacted Mr. Moore about this, and he said that it might be an issue with your home button. I can send you the directions he sent me on how to fix this if you need them. Just send me an email that you need those directions. If it still doesn't work, it might be an issue with HMH, but please let me know if you are still having problems so that I can contact the company. Now on to the reading. We are starting on page 11 for those of you following along in your books. For those of you using the ebook, this would be Lesson 1, Exploration 2, and the title should say Studying the Ages of Fossils. No one was around to observe fossils forming or to see other natural processes occurring millions of years ago, yet we can infer what happened in the past based on what we know about the natural processes that occur today. Scientists assume that geologic events and phenomena that happen today also happened in the past and that they apply everywhere in nature. This scientific principle is called uniformitarianism. We can use these assumptions to interpret fossil data. For example, scientists know that today sedimentary rock forms when sediments carried by air, ice, water, or gravity are deposited in layers in a new location. Over time, the weight of the sediment layers puts pressure on the layers below them and sedimentary rock forms. So we can assume that sedimentation and sedimentary rock formation in ancient seas occurred in a similar way. The picture on the right is a satellite photo that shows rivers that carry water and sediment out to sea. The water will break down or erode the soil rock along the riverbank and carry those pieces down the river. As those pieces are carried, they will be deposited or dropped at different spots in the river, and most of the pieces will end up in the sea. This would result in the sediment to build up. This is sedimentation. Question 9 asks, how does knowledge of sedimentary rock formation help us to understand fossils? Your answer should mention that if we know how the rock around the fossil was formed, then we can make conclusions about how those fossils formed and what the environment the organism lived in would have looked like. Relative ages of rock layers. Sedimentary rock forms in layers. The law of superposition states that in a sequence of undisturbed sedimentary rock, the oldest layers are at the bottom and the youngest ones are at the top. The oldest layers are deposited first. Over time, these layers are buried as new sediment gets deposited on top of existing layers. This layering of rock is very noticeable in the Grand Canyon because several of the rock layers are different colors. By studying the layers in undisturbed sedimentary rock, scientists can find the relative age of each layer. The relative age of a rock layer relates to whether that layer is older or younger than other rock layers. Question 10 says the rock layer on the top of the Grand Canyon is the youngest or oldest because it was deposited most recently or in the distant past. Layers in the middle are younger or older than the surface layer. The layer furthest down is the youngest or oldest because it was deposited most recently or the earliest. The answers in order should be youngest, most recently, older, oldest, and the earliest. Turn the page. Geologic columns. Scientists can also compare the relative ages of rock layers in different areas. This comparison is done using a geologic column. A geologic column is an ordered arrangement of rock layers that is based on the relative ages of the rocks, with the oldest rocks at the bottom of the column. It is made by piecing together different rock sequences from different areas. A geologic column, therefore, represents an ideal image of a rock layer sequence that doesn't actually exist in any one place on Earth. It is a conceptual model that shows the order of different rock layers and fossils over time. Scientists can compare a rock layer from one location with a similar layer in a geologic column that has the same fossils or that has the same relative position. If the two layers match, then they probably formed around the same time. A geologic column is like a master key for a test. Not everybody who takes the test is going to have the exact same answers. We are skipping question 11. Absolute ages of rock layers. Sometimes scientists want to know the absolute or actual age of rocks or fossils. Scientists know that certain unstable particles that make up matter in rocks and living organisms change into different stable particles at a constant rate. This process is called radioactive decay. Some particles decay or break down in just hours, other particles decay over millions of years. For example, one type of particle in igneous rock is radioactive uranium. When igneous rock forms, it contains a small amount of radioactive uranium. Over millions of years, these uranium particles decay to form lead particles. Scientists know the rate at which particular radioactive particles decay. The time needed for half of a sample of a radioactive substance to decay is called the half-life. Because each radioactive substance decays at a specific constant rate, each radioactive substance has a specific half-life. The half-life of radioactive uranium is 704 million years. That means it takes 704 million years for half of the rock's uranium to change to lead. The picture at the bottom of the page shows how the half-life of uranium would work. At 0 years, imagine if there were 10,000 uranium particles. In 704 million years, one half-life, there would be 5,000 uranium particles and 5,000 lead particles. At 1,408 million years, the uranium particles would now be 2,500. At 2,112 million years, uranium would be 1,250. This would continue until all the uranium would turn into lead. Radiometric dating. The method of finding the absolute age of rock based on comparing the amounts of unstable radioactive particles to stable particles in a sample is called radiometric dating. For example, at any point in time, scientists can measure the amount of uranium and lead in a sample of igneous rock and find the rock's age. Fossils do not contain the unstable particles that are used in radiometric dating, so scientists cannot use radiometric dating directly on fossils. Instead, they use radiometric dating on igneous rock layers. Igneous rock forms from cooled magma and lava. Fossils are not found in igneous rock because the high temperature of the molten rock destroys the remains. Scientists determine the age of fossils by first identifying the age of the igneous rock layers above and below the fossils. Data from the igneous rock layers above a fossil provide an absolute age for the rock that formed after the fossil formed. Data from the igneous rock layer below provide the absolute age for the rock that formed before the fossil formed. This information gives scientists a time span in which the fossilized organism lived. Question 12 reads, a fossil was found in a sedimentary rock layer. The igneous layer directly above the sedimentary layer was analyzed for radioactive uranium. You found equal amounts of uranium and lead in the igneous sample. This means that the relative or absolute age of the igneous layer is 704 million years, and the age of the fossil is in the sedimentary rock layer below is older or younger than 704 million years. The answers in order would be absolute and older. Index fossils. Scientists observe that certain types of fossils appear only in certain layers of rock on Earth and only for a short span of time. By finding the age of igneous rock layers above and below these fossil layers, scientists can determine the time span during which the fossilized organisms lived. These fossils, called index fossils, can then be used to estimate the absolute age of all the rock layers in which they are found. To be an index fossil, the organism from which the fossil formed must have lived during a relatively short geologic time span. The fossils must be relatively common and must be found over a large area on Earth. Index fossils must also have features that make them easy to distinguish from other fossils. This picture is of a Nereid, which is an extinct sea snail. They only lived during the Jurassic period. They are an index fossil for that period. Turn the page. This chart shows how to determine the age of fossils. In location 1 at the purple flag, they are using radiometric dating to find the age of the igneous rock, which would help determine the ages of the fossils above and below the igneous rock layer. In location 2, the pink flag would be where the oldest layer of sedimentary rock is. This means those fossils are the oldest. In location 3, the blue flag is where you will find index fossils. They can look up the age of the index fossils to determine the ages of the other fossils. In location 4, the yellow flag is where the topmost or youngest layer of sediment is. This layer would have the youngest fossils. We are skipping question 13. So, geologic time scale. Evidence from absolute dating indicates that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. To help make sense of this vast amount of time, scientists use geologic time scales to organize Earth's history. The geologic time scale divides Earth's history into intervals of time defined by major events or changes on Earth. The largest category of time is the eon, which is further divided into eras, periods, epochs, and ages. Dividing that long period of time into smaller parts makes it easier for scientists to commute their findings about rocks and fossils. The chart shows exactly how some of the time on Earth has been divided into eons, eras, periods, and epochs. Do the math. The geologic time on Earth spans more than 4.5 billion years. Let a football field, which is 100 yards long, model the number of years since Earth formed about 4,500,000,000 years ago. Question 14. Using this data, how many years of Earth's history would each yard line on the football field represent? You will divide 4,500,000,000 by 100. Your answer should be 1 yard equals 45 million years. Question 15. The first modern humans appeared on Earth about 200,000 years ago. Would it be possible to measure that number in terms of feet on a football field? Explain your answer. The answer is no, because there are 3 feet in a yard, and 200,000 out of 45 million would be too small to measure in feet. Turn the page. Skip question 16. Estimate the age of a fossil. Suppose you found this turtle fossil in a layer of sedimentary rock. You observed that the rock layer also includes many tiny fossilized plate-like structures called coccoliths. These tiny plates once protected marine algae called coccolithophores. You find out that coccolith fossils are good index fossils. This fossilized sea turtle has bite marks in its shell, indicating that it was in a predator-prey relationship with another creature. Question 17. Which methods could you use to help estimate the age of the turtle fossil? Select all that apply. A. Date the fossil with a radiometric dating method. B. Date the fossil with a relative dating method, or examine what order the rock layers are in and where your fossil is located. C. Look up the age of the coccolith index fossil. D. Date a nearby igneous rock layer with a radiometric dating method. The answers would be B, C, and D. A is wrong because fossils cannot be dated using the radiometric method, but knowing the age of the igneous rock through radiometric dating, knowing the relative age of the rock the fossil is in, and knowing the age of the index fossils will all be helpful in identifying the age of the turtle fossil. That is all we are reading in the book today. Your assignment on Google Classroom is to complete a web quest. I've made the document editable for all students, so you should be able to write your answers on the Google Doc. You can also write them on a separate Google Doc or on a separate sheet of paper, but you will need to upload that document or a picture of it to Google Classroom. The assignment is due March 24th for Black Day students and March 25th for Gold Day students. Your fossil lab and biodiversity projects are due then as well. For your fossil lab, I just need a picture or document upload that has your answers to the questions on the lab. I do not need pictures of your fossils. For your biodiversity project, I will need a picture of your drawn biome as well as your answers to the questions in the packet. I will create a Turnitin space for your biodiversity project on Google Classroom, as well as a copy of the instruction packet I gave you in class. If you have questions, please email me. I can also hold a Zoom meeting. You should have the app in Meraki.